everybody. Welcome along to another question corner where we answer things about Camunda. And we usually have a special guest. This is the case as well. We'll introduce him shortly. First of all, we, as always, decided to introduce ourselves in a unique way. This is a BPMN.io special, and therefore we have used BPMN.io to introduce ourselves. Right in the middle, wearing a lovely watch, is of course me. I am Niall Deaton. I'm a developer advocate with Camunda. I'll be hosting this and answering some questions about technical things, but I won't be the only one because on my, is that my left? Your right, depending on if this is me. It is upside down Nayla. Nayla, would you like to say hello?
Hello, everyone.
Do you want to explain why you're doing a handstand there?
This is embarrassing. Okay, I tried doing handstand for now like 3 years and I could not really figure out how to stand on my hands. So maybe in the future there will be a handstanding me. So
yeah, this is an aspirational picture. And of course, we also have our guest joining us from the wonderful world of BPMN.io. Nico, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello, welcome everyone. Thanks for having me. And I'm the project lead BPMN.io. Started to build the project, working at Camunda as well, and yeah, building those lovely diagrams that power a lot of applications at Camunda and a lot of modeling applications around the world. So happy to be here.
Thank you very much. And I made Nico's body out of gateways because, as I said before this talk, he is the gateway to knowledge today. So this is a rare opportunity to try and get that info from Nico. Now, as always, we are being overseen by our lovely community manager, Luca, who will be ensuring we don't do anything terrible and make sure that everything goes according to plan. So thanks, Luca. Do you want to say hi, Luca, or wave?
Hey everyone, so I'm Luca, I'm the community manager at Camunda, and yeah, I'm supporting all the community events and meetups, and it's great to have you all here.
Fantastic. Okay, let's speed along then. First of all, as usual, we're using Slido for all of our questions. Luca should be able to drop that link in the chat, and this will be the part of this. All questions will be going through Slido. You can use your phone to scan the QR code to have it right there. And if you want to make sure you don't take a single eye off us as we talk, you can also use the link that Luca just shared, and the questions there you can ask your own, you can upvote others, it's completely up to you. We already have a bunch of questions, but it's important to know that oh yes, and this is the slide where I show how that works. Ask your questions here, upvote questions there, and we will answer them. It's important for us that you lovely people here are the ones we answer questions for, since you were kind enough to show up. So if we'll take questions live and we'll prioritize those if we can. So you are in a very prestigious spot of wasting your 45 minutes with us and getting answered to questions while you do it. So lucky you. As well as asking questions, Slido is also going to be useful for taking polls. So let's do one of those right away. I assume people are already on Slido, and therefore this poll will automatically have some kind of thing. There we go. Press play. Fantastic. So let me share my screen again so we can see what the question is. The question is, yes, what experiences have you had with BPMN.io? I used to model it, I used to visualize it, I embed it in my application, and I build extensions for it. Oh, interesting. Okay. We have most people use it to model their BPMN. Okay, cool. So that is I've also let people select multiple answers here. So it's possible that you use it to model BPMN and you've also built extensions for it. It's actually nice that we have people who have built extensions for it here. That's really cool. So thanks for that. The modeler itself, the reason I'm going to, before I jump into questions, if you have any questions at all about the modeling experience around Camunda, Nico is the man to answer those questions. Every part of Camunda basically that we produce has BPMN.io in it. It is the overview in Cockpit. It is in task list. If you see the model, it is the heat map and optimize. It is the modeler. It's absolutely everywhere. So you're going to come across it everywhere. So you can, this is your opportunity to ask some questions if you have them from the main man himself who has created this. And It, of course, is extendable and embeddable. And if you have questions about that explicitly, again, there already are some, but we're happy to answer those. So thanks for your answers. We mostly have people who have built extensions for it, which is mad, which is really cool. That's very nice.
I can't believe those results, honestly.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I mean,
I'm
building
really
extensions has to be so much fun. So
we got to get one more person to say that they've embedded in their application just to make this all even, but we'll leave it for now. So let's throw it to our expert. Nico, is there any specific question you'd like to start with? Let me know.
I would like to, there's actually one question. Can you please share the meeting Zoom link here, please? I want to join the meeting. So maybe it's possible in Slido to actually share the link, maybe as a question as well.
Wait, who? Oh, there it is. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so,
that is odd. I'm not sure how we can share the Zoom link via Slido. Luca, I might throw that to you. I have no idea how we can do that from now on.
We'll just paste it as another question, right? So that
could work.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, let me try and do that.
All right.
Actually, Luca, can you do that while we take on the next question?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll leave that for Luca to do. So yes, good question. Is there any other question, Nico, that strikes your fancy other than logistical issues that you're trying to solve for people?
Yeah, I just had a look, and so the one question which is more or less live, or the latest question we had is, did support for element templates for BPMN process change in the modeler? Could you provide a working example? E.g., KPI template doesn't seem to work after update. I need to provide a little bit of context to that question, because I'm not exactly sure how much background knowledge everyone in here has. So element templates, it's a Camunda modeler feature, which basically allows you to provide certain pre-configured elements, which you can basically select, and then like in your modeler, using the properties panel, you can select via an element template, for instance, tasks that will always send email. So this means there will be custom controls provided to you. It will be much easier for people to, so it's like a domain-specific task, you can think of it, right? So, and the question here is, did support for that change? And is there a working example? So the answer is there's a couple of working examples in the modeler itself, in the GitHub repository, github/camunda/camunda-modeler. There's a couple of examples that should all work. If something does not work, we encourage you to approach us via GitHub, via our forum, and then we'll sort it out. Like the element templates are features that also just recently, with the integration with Cavimo, got even more focus, and we are our plan is to keep those and not to get rid of them, because we have good reports from people. People build crazy things from it, and the domain-specific nature makes it easier for your users to like make less errors as you model. So approach us via the forum, approach us via GitHub, and you will be able to we'll sort it out what's not working. Yeah,
the element templates, I think, have gotten more support over the last while. So if they've changed at all, it's to add additional features. Like Nico said, we've seen some really cool stuff, and one of the things that we've added is, as you said, connection to a repository that you can keep of templates you can keep in Cavimo that connects to the modeler, that's versioned and stuff. It's actually a very cool feature. I have no idea if it's open source or not, or no, it's available for free or not. I haven't checked that, but I assume it's worth trying out. It's very, very cool. And but element templates in general are free to use by everyone, and you can always check out the code examples that exist. And if you have any problems, as Nico said, I'll drop the link to the BPMN.io forum in the chat in a few seconds. Okay, so I will take that one done. I'll give Nico a rest from speaking for a moment and let Nela pick her poison.
Well, I will go back to Nico at one point, but I like the one that is upvoted. Does BPMN.io have a way to enforce the BPMN standard when modeling? I think, first of all, if you have the modeler downloaded, or there is BPMN.io embedded in it, it already prevents you to do certain connections. So certain things are not allowed in the modeler to do, and that's just there out of the box. But there's also the cool plugin, or the possibility to use plugins for the modeler. And one way to get rules into that diagram is actually the linting plugin. And there are some basic rules configured in the plugin, but the really cool thing here is that you can then start to write your own rules for that plugin. So you can make sure, for example, in our company, we always want to have a start label and we want to have an end label for our events, stuff like this. And actually, Nico, I remember you did a really good presentation on that during the Camunda-Con 2019, right? So this might be a good starting point.
Yeah, exactly. So we just to provide a little bit more context to it, we are always, when we talk about BPMN.io, and this is a BPMN.io special, right? We're always talking about those two different layers. BPMN.js, it's a library that everyone can embed in the browser to render BPMN or model BPMN. You will get the same quite well done modeling experience that you experience from the Camunda modeler in the web, just with the integration of single script tag. So this is basically the level, right? BPMN.js. And then we have the thing that Nele referred to is, we have that in the Camunda modeler. We have a plugin system in there. And basically all the extensions that you can have in the Camunda modeler are, if you think about it, they are also extensions for the core modeling experience for those libraries like BPMN.js, for instance. So this question specifically, you've already answered it very nicely, I think. There's, again, two different layers. One layer is, is it a drawing tool? Like, is it something like Visio? Is it something like Paint? Or is it an actual modeling tool? So what I sometimes like to refer to it is not a drawing tool. You cannot do whatever you want. By design, and this is very important, by design, you will end up with models that make some sense. In Visio, there's also a way to model BPMN, but there's so many interesting things you can do. With BPMN.js, out of the box, like, you will always end up with models that are BPMNs compliant. They're compliant when it comes to the export, but they're also compliant to certain semantics. And then there's additional things on top, how you can improve the quality of your diagrams. For instance, what Niall just showed is, well, start events without a label don't really make a lot of sense. So in this case, there's this additional layer. Exactly, you show down here the linting, where you can have additional validation put on top. So the answer is, on so many different levels, we enforce, or we guide the user to create good BPMN diagrams. So it will be much easier to create a good BPMN diagram with BPMN.js or the Camunda modeler, which embeds it, than with Visio with some BPMN plugin. I think that answered it pretty nicely. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Nico. Actually, the one additional thing I wanted to say is that the modeler, I think none enough credit is given to the modeler team for creating really subtle ways of ensuring models work. And my favorite example is start events, because if you see here, this start event, you can have a message start event, timer, conditional, and so on. Because this is bounded in a sub-process, your options are different. You can't have any other types. And as well, if you make this an event sub-process, everyone's favorite symbol, you have a whole list of other stuff that's only possible in an event sub-process. So even the modeler makes you feel like you're actually not being forced to do anything. There's loads of subtle validation that happens behind the scenes that you may not be aware of. And I really love that about the modeler. So well done, guys. Make me not mess up my models.
And
okay.
maybe one more thing, you said you should not use it for drawing, but we saw that even you could use it for drawing, like Niall showed us in the first picture that he drew out of us. So it's still possible, but probably has no deeper sense to it.
Yeah, I'm a rule breaker. So I will grab a question next. Let me see. I'll grab a non-modeler question just because there was one about Kafka stuff, I think I remember. Let me see if I can find that again. Yes, there we go. Okay, so here's one. What is the roadmap to bring an adapter like Kafka JMS? Is one of the plans to visualize a visual tool to map these attributes? Okay, so let me rephrase this question slightly. First of all, people want to use Camunda to connect to Kafka or use JMS for messaging. And that's the first part of it. The second part is the visualization, which I think is a different question. The first thing is, so the visualization thing that Camunda does is very specific. We want to give a human readable visualization of processes for both developers and business people alike. And generally speaking, Kafka stuff and JMS stuff is far too low level to in the sense that it's far too technical for analysts to really care about that to that degree that it needs to be shared across departments. And therefore, with that focus in mind, it's very unlikely that we'd want to add additional features like that wouldn't be a standardized thing like BPMN. That said, there's also the reason why we may not do that is because there's actually a whole bunch of visualization tools out there already that do this. And because Camunda is really good at connecting lots of different systems and being able to sort of centralize and orchestrate lots of different tools like connecting to Kafka and connecting to JMS, it can end up becoming the visualization for those systems. Which is really interesting because I've seen loads of projects that use Kafka as the messaging bus and Camunda in the middle as the thing that actually shows what happens if everything goes according to plan, without the need for having the complex mappings of messaging back and forth. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question. Nico, I'm actually going to pick a question for you, if that's okay. Mainly because I noticed that Thies is on the call and he did ask a question already, so I want to sort of throw that up. Are you happy to answer this thing here? It's about modeler plugins, which I think you know enough about to be able to answer.
Yeah, so the question is, what's the current state of creating plugins for the modeler? Can you give a rough overview of the basic elements and tools required to build one? I can refer you to this talk I gave at CamundaCon, I think 2019. Where which was more like a workshop style. And at the end of the talk, which was our workshop, 1.5 hours, everyone was supposed to have a plugin running. So this is likely end-to-end answers your question. So there is I can provide a little bit more details, but I will drop the link to that talk in chat later on so you can actually follow along. So the long story short, the Camunda Modeler, it's a desktop application, but it's also a web application in a sense. So basically, in order to create a plugin, you're able to hook into specific areas of the tool. Like you can hook into the instantiation of the BPMN like editor. But you can also hook in to inject your own style sheets. So you will need to have a little bit of background in web development to actually do that. And then obviously you need to understand a little bit the extension mechanisms. We have we have existing examples for that. There's a ton of smaller and bigger plugins already you can have a look into and get inspired from. So it is, how to say, like it's not the most easy task to build a plugin depending on your background. But if you're proficient with web development, if you follow along our existing example, it's totally doable.
Cool, thanks so much. Do you have any good existing tutorials or documentation as well to go along with that? That might exist, or even a GitHub repo that has a really nice basic example of plugins? Because I get this question quite a lot.
Well, we have the Camunda Modeler plugin example, right? Which is GitHub/Camunda/Camunda Modeler plugin example, which is basically an example plugin, right? We have this example plugin. I will drop the link in chat. Also gives you access to additional documentation. So we have plugin documentation. We also have a list of existing plugins where you can see all those extension points that are being used in practice. And what we also have, what I was referring to is a talk at CamundaCon I gave 2019. And I will try to find it and later post it in chat, which is essentially a walkthrough. It really takes you by the hand and walks you through the plugins. You can follow along. You can even rewatch the video to, step by step understand it. The only thing that will be different from the workshop 2019 is that there will be no one walking next to you and helping you out if you're stuck. So, but then again, you can always ask questions regarding that stuff on the Camunda forum. There's a bunch of helpful people, including Niall and myself, and we are so happy to help you out. Just recently, there was a guy who asked if he could contribute a dark mode to the Camunda Modeler. Like, I'm happy, yeah, just contribute a dark mode to Camunda Modeler as a modeler plugin. It's amazing. And then we obviously support you. with these kind of questions.
And I also think
Yeah.
the nice thing about your talk is that you have not just the talk, but also in GitHub, like a README where it's really explained quite well which steps you have to follow. So if you don't want to watch a talk, you can still use the GitHub to follow the tutorial.
Exactly. I will share it in just a second. And Niall, I assume those the things that we share will be also part of the video afterwards, right?
We'll
so
put them in
people
the
can,
description. Yeah.
in the description. Amazing.
Yeah.
So nice.
Can I ask you both a question? If you both could wish for a Modeler plugin, what would you like to see as a Modeler plugin?
I mean, I think Nico can guess that I would want complete token simulation. I mean, that I've been asking for that for maybe 6 years, I think, at this stage. I think from the very inception of the Beefman IO project, I was like, can we get token simulation there?
Yeah. Well, obviously I'm biased, right? I'm not only like there's so many things I wish for, but on the other hand, I know the constraints we're operating in, right? So it's always a decision what to invest your time in. But if I would just wish, I think token simulation, yes, it has a huge potential. It has an incredible potential just for make it understandable to people, like those token semantics, which are, it's good to have a picture rather than a text, right? This is what BPMN for. But even then, if you have a picture, but the thing is actually running later on, you want to see the thing running, right? So a running token tells more than 1,000 pictures, which are just static, right? So it's so very, from my point of view, very, very interesting.
Yeah,
And
token simulation exists to a certain degree right now. I'll just show it. It looks so beautiful.
It does, but then there are certain limits. And
Yeah.
And one thing I want to highlight here, there's a second thing I would wish for. I would wish for not only token simulation, but the linting, which also exists. So the fact that as you model, you already have the kind of quality assurance by BPMN.io, like the core libraries, powered by the spirit of, we try to make sure that you don't screw up in a positive sense, right? We support you to model good BPMN diagrams. Next level is having actual linting. Have this not only as a plugin, but having this at the, it can still be a plugin, but having this as a core, as a modeler. And then there's another thing I would wish for. I would wish for a plugin installer, guys.
Yeah.
How amazing would it be? We have so many plugins. How amazing would it be? Like something like a marketplace, right? Just click somewhere and bam, you get the plugin in there. It blows up your modeler. Well, uninstall it with a single click, right? So this kind of, I think that would all even accelerate basically those extensions, people building the extensions.
Let's just hope Nico finds a magic lamp so we can get his 3 wishes. I think that's our best hope at the moment, unless the team grows by like 300% and we can implement all of this.
Yeah, and and regarding obviously like the team, like the core team, and we are busy with so many other exciting things, right? So it's you know, I'm a little bit biased, so I have those wishes, but on the other hand, I know all the other exciting things we're up to right now. So
that's good at least. Cool. Nela, do you want to answer a question?
Yeah. Wait, you're scrolling too fast.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you're looking at my screen.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Is there a specific aspect that makes Camunda modeling tools better than alternatives? It's a good question. I think what I like about the Camunda modeler is that you can use the plugins and that it really helps you once you want to automate your processes. And I kind of feel that other modeling tools are not helping you that much in the way of going to automation with different plugins, for example, transaction boundaries. That comes very useful if you want to bring that to the Camunda engine. Niall showed that already, that when you have a start event, it just allows you to have specific start events. So it already gives you a lot of hints to make good models. And that's what I really like about it. And probably I don't know all alternatives here, but from the perspective, if you want to automate, I feel from the tools that I've known so far, Camunda is really the best for that, to support you.
Yeah, I think I'd probably agree. The extendability, I think, is quite unique, actually, and embeddability. I don't think there's another modeler out there that's extendable and embeddable in the same way that Camunda's is. Not the ones I've used, anyway. It's also just, slicker to use. A lot of the modelers have this properties panel insanity all over the place for loads of ticking boxes and stuff. And we do have a properties panel that maybe we should probably improve, but it's got a lot of most of what you need to model. In fact, all of what you need to model is right there on the canvas. You don't need to go into to tick boxes or select too many weird drop downs for menus. You just go ahead and you model straight away and everything's quite easy. That's not always true of other modelers. So I personally quite like that, because I think we use a lot of different modelers. I know, Naila, whenever you were doing consulting stuff, when we would do trainings, we would say, hey, if you're using a different modeler instead of the one that Camunda provides, we'll do trainings with that modeler. So I know Naila has had some nasty experiences in with that degree.
Don't remind me.
But I guess it's important to remember all the other modelers are out there. In fact, if you're interested in seeing other modelers and seeing how Camunda does stack up, there is the MyWig thing that happens every year, where we actually show all of the vendors get together and build a model and pass it through all the BPMN compatible modelers. And you can kind of see all the different stuff out there and see what's available. It's worth checking out. And I wouldn't be saying that if I didn't know that ours is the best.
And maybe one more thing about this, because some of the alternatives, they don't do real BPMN. So the magic behind it is the XML that is generated. And I saw some tools that are having the symbols, but they don't have the XML behind it. And then you have a problem with your automation later on. So if you use an alternative, make sure at least it has a BPMN, like it has a BPMN standard embedded. That means it has the XML.
Cool.
I have a Niall. Maybe if you.
Oh, sorry. I'll unanswer that question. Sure.
If you unanswer that one, and basically, can I share the link in chat? Maybe you can open that for a bit, because I would like to. You made those strong points for modeling. What I want to highlight is a few of those which are deliberate design decisions. So one thing that is a deliberate design decision is that you will always end up with valid BPMN, right? Nele mentioned it, right? It is slick, it is focused. You don't need a properties panel. You will be able to get going at construction, and you don't have to scroll here. But if you scroll, just go up to the beginning, to the TLDR.
Sorry,
so yeah. we have a clear understanding what we're gonna build, right? It doesn't have to be in your way. It has to support you. It has to be contextual, right? There's a lot of hard work being done under the hood. It will automatically change your boundary, not your boundary events, but your start events, for instance, right? If you're putting that message start into a subprocess, because the subprocess doesn't support a message start event, right? So we are doing all those things which in the end allow you to model in a worry-free way in an effective manner. And this is the tool itself. It is meant to speed you up. It will, so the goal is it shouldn't slow you down, and you shouldn't even recognize how it speeds you up, but it will just, I can actually do a talk. Can talk to Niall, and I can, in a worry-free way, model as I talk. So this is the aspiration, right? So this is a core modeling itself, and then there's obviously the other things you talked about, and yeah.
Cool, thanks, Nico. My computer's doing some weird freezy stuff, so I hope it lasts. I'm going to. There was a question a second ago that someone posted that I wanted to ask about the engine, since they're here. So this is posted by someone who's present. This is an unfortunate question, because a lot of this is, a bunch of this throws a bit of design red flags at me. The first HTTP connectors are very annoying to use. They were initially created a while ago in order to let people who didn't really want to write Java classes to basically make REST calls or SOAP calls. And this existed really well for a while, but the problems are they're embedded in the model, they're hard to version. They're also limited by the threads, and this was what's going to come to this particular question, is they're limited by how the engine itself deals with threads in process instances, which is a really big problem when it comes to trying to increase performance on connectors, because you're also then limited by the engine's own assurances that the context of the process instance isn't lost when the process continues. So the first thing I would suggest, if at all possible, try to use something else. Try to use external tasks. They're far better to use for if you don't want to use Java, or if you don't want to have your deploy your model with business logic attached to it, but keep it the way it is. The factor there now is that what can you do to increase that? Basically, connectors are going to run off the thread pool in your Tomcat server itself. If you want to increase the number of threads that overall you can do, you can increase the number of Tomcat nodes, maybe. That might do it. You can maybe increase the number of threads that the engine picks up for jobs and work. That would also do it in the settings. But realistically, you're going to be locked down by the problem of there will only ever be one thread active on a process instance at any one time for consistency reasons, because we cannot have the state existing in two different threads in two different ways at the same time. So you're going to always be locked down by that. Luckily, because external tasks are literally external, they get away from that. They can run in their own thread pool. So you actually get a way better performance. So I'm sorry I don't have a hugely satisfactory answer for you, but yeah, that's where I'm at. Sorry about that. Use a different logical thing, or increase your number of nodes. Would do the trick as well to increase the threads. Okay, I'll take that there. I've forgotten who's next, but I do see a question here from Tees. So I'll actually, what's this one here? Yeah, this one came in before the thing, but it's got voted up. So let's go with democracy for a change. This is something that only I think Nico on the call can actually answer. So I'm going to let you answer this one about the events that happen within the diagram.
So this, I can only assume the context is extending, right? Because why would you otherwise be interested in the events that actually happen? So, so the long story short, the BPMN, like the library BPMN.js used under the hood, it is highly event-driven. So you can intercept, not intercept in a sense of abort necessarily, but intercept any kind of click. And you can also intercept any kind of modeling operation that is taking place. So basically, what you will have events you can subscribe to, like double click, context, or right click, what it is, right? And then you can react to those. But there's also more things you can do. So extending the modeling experience doesn't only work on clicking, but there's a lot of other facilities we have, like something like an overlay, where you can add additional metadata to elements that are being shown. Or you can hook into modeling rules. For instance, whenever a task is being created, I want to create another task right after it. So this is a kind of, so it's highly event-driven. There's a lot of events you can actually look into.
I think Niall is gone. I share my screen for the questions. I don't have the, I have a different view. I have the participants view, but we answered this one. So we need to make sure that Niall tick this one once he is back. I see he's popping into the call. But let's see what else we have here in the list, actually. There's one that I see here about the resize tasks. Probably, Nico, you can tell us how it's possible. I like the fact when I did trainings that it's not possible to resize tasks, and there's one reason behind it. A model is there to give you a quick overview also about your business process. And I like to tell people, be precise, try to type a precise description inside the task. And if you really need to give more information, then you can use an annotation, but inside your task, don't try to write a whole essay. But Nico, I think you can give us an insight how we could resize tasks if we really want to do that.
Yeah, again, so as you mentioned, it's a deliberate decision. We want to make you as successful as possible drawing your diagrams, drawing meaningful diagrams. So this is why we took the opportunity to just not allow you to do it, because that will likely hurt you more than it will benefit you. So this is kind of these design decisions we make, right? It is still possible nonetheless. So there is a resize task plugin for the Camunda modeler, which makes all your tasks resizable. So if you really want to resize all your tasks, you can install that plugin, and I will try to find it in a little bit and actually post it in the chat as well. So the second thing is, if you're just using BPMN.js, there's also a plugin available just for BPMN.js. So we come with some strong opinionated defaults, but due to our extensibility, it is your choice to actually change it, right? And maybe just for fun, I see you looking into, maybe you can change the width of the activity, like the activity something, exchange the width.
I was trying to do that, so to show that you even don't need to install a plugin. Activity, I need to find it.
It's BPMN shape.
Here we have it.
Exactly. If you change the width to something like 150, this will obviously break your layout, right? So it will break the layout of your.
No, we don't go wide here, but
go make it 800.
There you go.
But
nice.
Yeah, so
there you have it.
Even possible without a plugin, yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly, and the library itself, like just the part that draws the diagrams, not edits your diagrams, but draws the diagrams, it will eat whatever you throw at it. So if you created a diagram with your crazy, system where everything is resizable, it's fine. I mean, this looks more like a subprocess to me, but it is not, right? So already you see the danger of resizing arbitrarily, but it's your choice. It's your choice, and there's a lot of options for you to extend and modify. We also had other interesting extension use cases. So one use case, for instance, is there's a blog post on the BPMN.io blog regarding this, locking down BPMN.js. So sometimes when people are actually investing deep in extending, they have certain use cases, like you can only add specific tasks in certain places in the diagram. Everything else should be read-only. So this is also one of the things you can do if you want to. So we have a really strong extension story, this is also one thing that is kind of unique, I guess. And people, when we look into a forum, like not the Camunda forum, but the BPMN.io forum, forum.bpmn.io, where people ask those core library-related questions, this is we see that over and over again. The extension story, it's people understand it and people use it heavily. So that makes us very happy.
Cool, thanks, Nico. Also, welcome back. I thought I'd take a quick little break there. This is the internet gods destroying me for making fun of you earlier for losing your internet connection. They came and found me. So we have time for maybe one or two more questions. So I'll take one more maybe engine question for Nela and one more BPMN.io question for Nico. Nico, you can choose your last question, so I'll give you some time. Meanwhile, me and Nela will answer a tech question. There's this one here, Nela. What's best practice for microservice orchestration if we have API response composition? We have, what other engine questions? We kind of answered this one already. Yeah, so let's go with, yeah, okay, how about you answer the question of generally microservice orchestration stuff, and I'll take the second part of the question about the API composition.
Well, yeah, so when you want to use a workflow engine with microservice or with the microservices, there are multiple patterns actually you can choose from. So you could, if you want to have the engine embedded in your microservice itself, that would be possible. But of course, you also can use Camunda in a way to orchestrate your microservices. And then you would probably go for a standalone version of the engine and have external tasks connecting to the engine. And in that sense, you would be able to interact with the engine, and the engine would orchestrate your microservices.
Cool. Yeah, exactly. And if you have that set up, the API response that you want, you can kind of change that depending on the architecture and depending on how you implement your services. So for instance, the Camunda engine has a REST API that's already exposed. Now, if you use that directly, you're going to get whatever response that we have programmed the thing to give. One of the things you can do is you can build your own API in front of that. Another thing you can do is you can actually use the external task pattern that Nela mentioned in order to actually just fetch and lock tasks and get context you might need back from the engine, depending on what you want to do. But you have a lot of you have a lot of possibilities, but they all basically involve you doing stuff. And unfortunately, out of the box, not so much. If you use our inbuilt APIs, you're going to get the response that we want, that we expect you to do. I remember, I think, Nico, didn't you do a GraphQL extension many years ago? I think I have a vague recollection of that, where you showed how being able to use GraphQL can edit the response back. So I think there still is an extension that you can use for GraphQL and Camunda that would allow you to then define the exact response you get depending on your query. So that's one option.
It wasn't me, but the extension exists. So there is a community, certain community efforts in there. But yeah, as you mentioned, it really depends on your use case as well, right? So what you want to support.
Awesome.
I would yes, I think I found a question which is the latest question and right below, like the BPMN spec something says base elements can have one or more documentation elements. Why doesn't the modeler support adding multiple? I like that question because it's a nerd question. Why don't we support 100% of the BPMN standard? The answer is there's two levels to it. First, if you use an existing tool that has like a lot of documentation elements, and we can round trip it, so we will not actually remove any of those. So we're compatible, but the modeler itself, it has a properties panel, and it allows you to only have one. Like it will only maintain or allow you to edit the first documentation element. Which documentation elements they can also have a content type or something like this, right? I don't recall exactly, but it will allow you to edit the first a plain text or like untyped documentation element. So, and everything else will just pass it through, right? Will not display it to you. So to answer this question, the question is, what is your use case? Why would you support 20 documentation elements? It would be very interesting to understand that use case a little bit better. You can approach us in our forums because we tend to not blindly support everything that BPMN, the standard, supports, but we are very careful with adding additional features. We also don't support choreography diagrams, right? Because they are more or less scientific in a certain way, right? We don't support data input, data output, because obviously from the Camunda point of view, we have a different way of doing this data, which is a little bit more lean, right? But then also there's a lot of hidden complexity behind it, right? So we're careful with adding new features, but it's very interesting to understand those use cases. So if there's a clear use case for it, we're happy to look into that.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Nico. I'm going to, I realize now that we're very close to the end of time. So, and Thies just commented that he will bug you on the forum. So yeah, I think Nico is really up for being irritated asynchronously by various questions. So I'm sorry if you didn't get to your questions already, but we do have one usual thing to show you at the end, which is we've answered your questions. Now, wait, did I do this correctly? Yes, perhaps. So very important, we have the community summit coming up, and I'm going to ask Luca to drop in if she wants to explain to you some of the events that are happening. Luca.
Yeah, so our event highlight in April is definitely the Camunda Community Summit. So this is a conference exclusively for developers, and the CFP is open right now. So if you want to share your technical story, then you should definitely submit a presentation and definitely join us April 27th and 28th. And if you can go to the next slide, Niall, you have the power today. Of course, we always have a lot of great meetups coming up. I just put our events page into the chat, so you can just check out the page. We have great local events. Of course, they're all virtually at the moment. For example, a South Florida meetup or one in Frankfurt. If you can go to the next slide. We also have a great webinar coming up on March 10th. And as always, Question Corner is always the last Thursday of the month. So the next one is March 25th. Yeah, and I also put the link to the developer newsletter into the chat. So if you want to stay up to date and get great technical content, then you should definitely also subscribe to that one. Thank you for joining us today. That was fun. And
thanks so much, everybody. And Nico has already
already
disappeared.
left. Well,
He has apparently he has a very strict deadline. He's gone when the
I
meeting
just
says
wanted to thank Nico that he joined us, but well, he's already gone, but yeah.
I'd like to thank Nico for his punctuality in both attending and leaving. Thanks for all of you, of course, for joining us. Thanks to Neela for as hosting with me, and also Luca for helping organize everything and letting you guys know this was happening and doing all the event stuff. We'll see you maybe next time, either on the forums or at the next question corner. I hope this was useful. The recording of this will be available probably tomorrow evening, which will be edited so it looks like Nico was there the whole time. So don't worry, Nico. No one's going to know you were gone. I'm going to cut this all out of the recording. Don't worry about it. Okay, so thanks a lot, everybody. I'll see you again. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks for having me. Thanks.
Bye-bye.